Hey, space explorers.
Beyond the edge, the void waits.
Whispers in the void. Captain Liora Hayes floated silently in the observation deck, staring at the endless stretch of space beyond the reinforced glass. Stars twinkled like distant memories, each one a pinprick of light in the suffocating darkness. But tonight, the void wasn't silent. A faint vibration hummed through the ship's hull, so subtle that most crew members would have dismissed it as the groan of metal under stress. Yet Liora felt it in her chest, a pulse that didn't belong to the ship. She leaned closer to the viewport, trying to catch the source. Then she saw it. A shadow. Not moving like a meteor or comet, but hovering. A black shape that seemed to drink the light around it, swallowing stars whole. And it wasn't alone. Tiny glimmers, almost like sparks, danced around it in erratic patterns, forming symbols that made Liora's skin crawl. She wasn't supposed to see anything, at least not yet. The mission's logs had warned, do not acknowledge contact until confirmation from command. But the moment she saw it, a wordless compulsion took over. She reached for the ship's communication console, hands trembling, mind racing with a question she didn't yet understand. Was it trying to communicate or to warn her? Before she could press the intercom, the lights flickered. The hum grew louder, vibrating through every bone in her body. And then a voice. No, voices echoed inside her mind. Not through speakers, not in sound, but in thought. Do you want to see beyond the edge? Liora froze. The words weren't threatening, but they carried an urgency she couldn't ignore. She knew that whatever answer she chose would change everything. The mission, humanity's understanding of space, maybe reality itself. Her fingers hovered over the console. To respond could be dangerous. To ignore could be worse. Then the shadows pulsed again, and for a brief moment, Liora thought she saw a doorway, a dark corridor leading somewhere beyond the stars, beckoning. She whispered to herself, almost afraid to voice the question. Should I follow?
2. Liora's fingers trembled over the console. The shadows pulsed again, faster this time, almost as if they were watching her hesitation. Then, the tiny sparks around the void entity began forming patterns more clearly, symbols she didn't recognize, yet somehow felt familiar, like fragments of a dream she had once forgotten. Suddenly, the ship's AI, Aurora, spoke, but not in its usual monotone. Captain, I am detecting fluctuations in space-time around the anomaly. It is not stable. Approaching it could result in irreversible effects. But Liora's heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Irreversible effects? That sounded like an opportunity, not a warning. She took a deep breath, overriding the AI's caution protocols. Her eyes never left the dark corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. A single thought echoed in her mind, clearer than any other. Follow. The moment she committed, the viewport rippled as if reality itself had been disturbed. A tunnel of shadows and starlight opened before her eyes. It wasn't a hole in space, it was a doorway, and beyond it, she glimpsed shapes moving, cities of impossible architecture, luminous beings drifting through voids of liquid darkness, and stars collapsing and reforming like droplets of water. Liora felt a pull in her chest, a magnetic lure that seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat. Every instinct screamed to stop. Every instinct screamed to leap. Then, she realized something horrifying and thrilling at the same time. The voice, the shadows, they weren't outside her. They were inside, entwined with her perception. The edge is closer than you think. The edge is you, it whispered. Her vision blurred, and in that instant, Liora had a choice. Step forward, into the unknown, and risk vanishing forever. Or retreat, returning to the familiar confines of her ship, but knowing she might never understand what called to her. Her hand hovered above the command lever. The crew in their quarters were oblivious. The stars beyond the viewport seemed to pulse in anticipation. Then, something impossible happened. One of the sparks detached from the shadow and hovered directly in front of her, a tiny flickering orb of light. It projected an image, a figure she knew, though she couldn't place from where. The figure raised a hand, beckoning her silently. And Liora realized the truth. This wasn't just a choice. This was an invitation. Do you accept?
3. Liora's hand froze above the lever. Her mind screamed caution, but her heart was deaf to reason. She glanced back at the ship's interior, the blinking consoles, the sleeping crew, the familiar hum of machinery. Everything safe, everything known. But the pull from the shadows, from that flickering figure, was irresistible. She inhaled sharply, and in a moment that felt like both an eternity and an instant, she pushed the lever forward. The ship shuddered violently as reality itself seemed to twist. The viewport stretched and bent, stars streafing into elongated trails of light, and the familiar hum of the engines warped into a low, resonating chant. The crew stirred, awakening to alarms that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Liora clutched the console, her vision swimming, as the ship slowly, impossibly, slid into the void corridor. The moment they fully entered, the anomaly responded. The shadows shifted and multiplied, forming vast, swirling glyphs that spiraled around the ship like living tattoos of energy. The tiny sparks that had been dancing around the main shadow now fused into lines of light, tracing pathways that made no sense, yet felt like instructions. The figure appeared again, larger now, as if drawn from her memory. Its form shimmered between shapes, human, alien, something indescribable, and its eyes glowed with the intensity of a dying star. It spoke directly into her mind, words vibrating through her very bones. You were chosen, Liora Hayes. Few can see the edge, fewer still can cross it, but once you step further, there is no turning back. Are you ready to see what lies beyond the void? Her heart thundered, sweat dripping down her temple. She felt the pull of something infinite, terrifying, beautiful. And in the back of her mind, a whisper of doubt lingered. What if I disappear? What if nothing remains? Then the figure extended its hand toward her, not in menace, but in invitation. And for the first time in her life, she realized that the universe was not vast and empty. It was alive, aware, and watching. The question was no longer whether she should go. The question was, could she resist? And as the ship drifted closer, she caught a glimpse of something in the shadows. Tiny points of light forming a pattern, a map perhaps, or a warning. But before she could decipher it, the figure's voice whispered again, "Step forward or turn back. The void remembers everything."
4. Liora's hand shook as she reached toward the flickering figure. The moment her fingers brushed the light, a surge of energy shot through her body, lifting her off the deck as if gravity had forgotten her entirely. The ship groaned, alarms shrieking in the background, but Liora didn't notice. Her consciousness was being pulled into the corridor of shadows. Around her, the stars stretched into streams of silver and gold, twisting and bending in impossible ways. The void whispered in a language she didn't know, but somehow understood. Memories not her own, Visions of alien worlds, civilizations rising and falling, stars igniting and collapsing flooded her mind. And then she saw it, a doorway made not of metal or stone, but of pure darkness, outlined in starlight. The flickering figure hovered at its edge, waiting. "Step through," it said, its voice now a chorus, echoing through the void and inside her head. "What lies beyond will change you, forever." For a heartbeat, Liora hesitated. A part of her screamed to return to the safety of the ship, to the known universe. Another, a deeper, more primal part, urged her forward. Curiosity, fear, and awe collided in a storm inside her chest. Then she stepped. Instantly, the void swallowed her. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced. Time fractured, light bent around her, and the fabric of reality itself seemed to ripple. The corridor dissolved into a vast expanse, filled with floating islands of energy, glowing sigils hovering mid-air, and beings of light moving gracefully through the darkness. One of them approached her. Not the figure that had guided her here, but another. Tall, ethereal, its face both familiar and alien. Its eyes glimmered like nebulae. "Welcome, traveler," it said. "Few arrive here willingly. You have chosen curiosity over safety, but the void chooses who may stay and who will be unmade." A chill ran down Liora's spine. Unmade? Could she really survive this? Yet she felt alive in a way she never had before. Her fear mingled with exhilaration, creating a sensation she couldn't name. "Why me?" she whispered. The being tilted its head, a movement that seemed both deliberate and impossible. "The edge sees you, Liora. You are not random. You carry the questions, and soon, perhaps, the answers." Behind the being, a spiral of light twisted into a tunnel, beckoning further into the unknown. Liora realized the choice she faced now was bigger than stepping forward. It was about whether to embrace the void completely, to become part of something vast beyond comprehension, or retreat while she still could. And in that instant, the whispers of the void grew louder, almost insistent. "Decide, or be lost."
5. Liora hesitated only a heartbeat before she stepped toward the spiral of light. The void seemed to respond to her very presence, shimmering and warping around her as if sensing her intent. Each step sent ripples through the corridor, distorting time and space, and she realized she could feel the strands of reality, like threads vibrating under her fingertips. As she approached the center of the spiral, a chamber revealed itself. Not a chamber in any traditional sense, but a vast, open space where physics as she knew it seemed optional. Floating geometries rotated endlessly, and islands of light drifted like ships in a silent ocean. At the heart of it, an enormous crystalline structure pulsed rhythmically, casting beams that refracted into the void like fractals of pure thought. The ethereal being gestured toward the crystal. "This is the core of echoes. It contains fragments of every consciousness that has touched the edge of the void. Some are lost, some are remembered, and now a part of you will join it." Liora's mind raced. Join it? She felt a magnetic pull, a yearning to reach out, but fear gripped her chest. Her fingers hovered over the crystal's surface. The moment she made contact, visions exploded behind her eyes, memories that were not hers, civilizations that had risen and fallen, entire galaxies forming and collapsing in the blink of an eye. Then, a whisper unlike any other, personal, intimate, almost pleading. "Help us. We are fragments, trapped. Guide us." Liora realized the truth. The void was alive, sentient and fragmented. Every point of light, every shadow, every echo she had seen was part of a larger consciousness struggling to assemble itself. And somehow, it had chosen her as a key, a bridge. Her pulse quickened. This was no longer about curiosity. This was about responsibility. Every choice she made here could affect countless lives, perhaps the very fabric of the universe itself.
Then, something shifted. The crystal pulsed faster, and the fragments of consciousness began to swirl violently, as if impatient or scared. A single thought pierced through the chaos, clear and urgent. Choose, connect, or abandon us, and lose yourself. Liora's mind screamed with questions. How could one person bear the weight of such a choice? And yet, deep down, she knew she couldn't turn back, not now.
6. Liora's hand hovered over the pulsating crystal, the fragments of consciousness swirling like a storm of fireflies around her. Her chest tightened, mind racing with every possible consequence, but the pleading echo, "Help us," rang louder than her fear. Taking a deep breath, she pressed her palm against the crystal. Instantly, a surge of energy shot through her, a torrent of light and sound and thought that left her staggered. She no longer saw with her eyes alone. She felt with the entirety of herself. The memories, the emotions, the fears and hopes of countless beings stretching across eons. Some were alien, some uncannily human, and some indescribable. A voice, or perhaps 1,000 voices at once, flooded her mind. You are the bridge. You can unify us, or let us scatter forever. Images flashed before her, civilizations trapped in loops of decay, stars crying themselves into black holes, entities reaching out for guidance, and in all them, she saw fragments of herself reflected back. Not just Liora Hayes, the human captain, but Liora Hayes as part of something infinite. A wave of dizziness overcame her, and she gripped the crystal tighter. She felt the void pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, testing her resolve, asking silently, "Do you belong here?" And in that terrifying, exhilarating instant, she understood. She did. She belonged, not in the physical sense, but in the resonance of consciousness. She could feel the edge, the way it called to those willing to perceive it. She focused, willing herself to connect, to reach out to the fragments. Slowly, the storm of swirling light began to align, forming shapes, patterns, a language she didn't know, but instinctively understood. The fragments started whispering in harmony, voices no longer chaotic, but coherent. "Thank you. Guide us," they said, collectively. Then a new sensation. The void wasn't just around her, it was through her. She could sense paths across galaxies, threads of energy linking stars and planets, hidden corridors of reality only visible from this vantage. Every choice, every event, every fragment of life seemed to pulse in an intricate pattern. Liora realized that she had not only stepped beyond the edge, she had become part of it. The figure that had guided her nodded, almost approvingly, and then drifted back into the endless expanse of the void. And as she floated in the vast, surreal expanse of the void, she knew one thing with certainty. She had glimpsed the truth behind the universe, and it was alive, aware, and waiting for her and for those brave enough to follow. But just as relief began to settle, a shadow flickered at the edge of her perception, larger, darker than anything she had faced. A presence that did not seek guidance, but something else entirely. Something hungry. The void is vast, but not all of it is benevolent.
7. The shadow loomed at the edge of Liora's perception, vast and twisting, radiating a coldness that seemed to gnaw at the very essence of the void. Unlike the fragments she had just connected with, this presence pulsed with hunger, impatience, and something cunning. Liora steadied herself, feeling the energy of the core of echoes coursing through her. The fragments whispered guidance, their harmonized voices lending her clarity and courage. She realized that this was not a physical threat, it was a test, a challenge of will, perception, and connection. The shadows surged forward, distorting the space around it, folding light and time into jagged angles. Liora raised her hands, instinctively reaching out with the energy flowing through her. Streams of luminescent threads emanated from her fingertips, weaving around the shadow,
probing, analyzing, and touching the void in ways no human had ever managed. A thought resonated directly in her mind from the shadow. "You cannot contain me! You cannot command me! You are nothing!" But Liora's voice, her real voice, echoed back, steady and unwavering. "I am part of the void now. I am not nothing." The shadow recoiled, uncertain. It had never encountered a consciousness so deeply linked to the core, so attuned to the flow of the void itself. Liora felt the fragments responding to her call, merging into a wave of energy that reinforced her presence. With each pulse, she could feel the shadow weakening, forced to adapt to a network of awareness far greater than its own. Then came the moment of insight. The shadow was not merely an enemy. It was a lost fragment, corrupted and twisted by isolation. Liora extended her mental reach, threading the light of the fragments gently into the dark mass, not to destroy, but to heal. A scream of pure void erupted, echoing through every corner of her perception. The darkness writhed and contorted, but slowly, very slowly, patterns began to emerge. The shadows separated, breaking into smaller fragments, some dissipating, others stabilizing into coherent forms. Liora felt the exhilaration and terror of creation in a single heartbeat. She had not only defended herself, she had transformed chaos into order. The fragments whispered gratitude, their voices harmonizing into a single thought. "You are a guide, Liora, not just for us, but for the edge itself." And as she drifted in the calm aftermath, the spiral of light reformed around her, showing endless pathways through the void, each shimmering with possibility. She realized that the adventure was only beginning. The void was alive, vast, and full of mysteries, some welcoming, some perilous, but she was no longer an ordinary human. She had become its explorer, its bridge, its guardian. Yet in a corner of her mind, the echo of that corrupted shadow remained, a reminder. Not all that awaits beyond the edge wishes to be found or tamed.
8. With the corrupted shadow finally stabilized, Liora drifted through the endless expanse of the void, guided by the spiraling pathways of light. Each thread she touched revealed fragments of hidden realities. Planets suspended in liquid darkness, stars that sang in frequencies humans could not perceive, and civilizations that existed entirely as thought. Her connection to the core of echoes allowed her to move faster than the speed of light, not through engines or rockets, but through sheer awareness. Every pulse of her consciousness resonated with the void, opening doorways to realms no human had ever imagined. Then she noticed something unusual, a faint ripple, almost imperceptible, coursing against the natural flow of the void. Unlike the shadows or the fragments she had encountered, this ripple seemed aware of her. It twisted and pulsed, forming symbols she could almost decipher. The fragments whispered in alarm. "This is old, dangerous. Do not touch it." But Liora's curiosity surged. She reached toward the ripple. As soon as her consciousness brushed it, the void exploded in a cascade of colors and patterns. She was no longer just observing, she was inside a memory, or perhaps a warning left by something ancient. She saw a world collapsing, stars imploding, and a civilization's consciousness fragmenting into thousands of shards. A single figure, radiant and powerful, stood at the center, reaching out to something beyond comprehension. It whispered, not in words, but in pure thought. "Beware the unbound. They hunger for the void itself, and they remember all who dare to witness." Liora recoiled, her mind racing. The unbound. She had felt a shadow of their presence before, the corrupted shadow she had faced. But this ripple, this warning, it hinted at something far larger, far older, far more dangerous than anything she had imagined. She realized that her journey had only just begun. The void was not merely a space of discovery, it was a battlefield of consciousness, a realm where power, curiosity, and survival intertwined in ways humans could scarcely comprehend. And yet, as the fragments whispered encouragement and guidance, Liora felt a thrill she had never known, the chance to explore, to understand, to connect, and perhaps to face the unbound before they remembered her. For the first time, she smiled. The void was infinite, and she was no longer just a visitor. She was a participant.
9. Liora drifted deeper into the void, following the threads of light that pulsed from the core of echoes. Her connection to the fragments had grown stronger. She could sense entire realms of thought, entire civilizations, as if they were extensions of herself. But the warning of the unbound echoed in every pulse. Ancient predators, vast and hungry, who remembered all who dared to witness the void's secrets. Then suddenly, the darkness thickened. The light threads twisted violently, and the air, if it could be called air, grew heavy with the presence of something immense. From the shadows, the unbound emerged, colossal beings of pure void, their forms constantly shifting, glowing eyes scanning her essence as if measuring her worth. "You have trespassed," their collective thought resonated inside her skull. "You see what should be hidden." Liora's pulse quickened, but she did not retreat. She raised her hands, drawing on the core of echoes, channeling the collective consciousness of every fragment she had united. Streams of radiant energy poured from her, weaving into the unbound's forms, probing, binding, resonating. The unbound hissed, not in sound, but in thought, their awareness colliding with hers. A battle began, one not of guns or ships, but of consciousness, perception, and will. Memories, civilizations, and galaxies seemed to flicker around them as the void itself trembled. Then Liora realized the key. Fear was the unbound's weapon. Doubt was their anchor. She focused, centering herself, letting the fragments guide her. With a single deliberate thought, she expanded her consciousness, merging not to dominate the unbound, but to understand them. A shockwave of awareness pulsed through the void. The unbound froze, confused by her unprecedented approach. And then slowly, they began to separate, their hunger subsiding, curiosity replacing it. They had encountered someone who did not seek to destroy, only to bridge. The fragments whispered in harmony. "You are the bridge. You are the edge." The colossal forms of the unbound dissolved into streams of light, retreating into the void, leaving Liora alone, but stronger, wiser, and forever changed. She floated in the expanse, no longer just a human in a ship, but a consciousness attuned to the infinite, a guide for the void itself. And as she looked at the endless spirals of light and shadow stretching before her, she understood the truth of the void. It was not empty. It was alive. It remembered. It waited. And now, it had chosen her. Liora smiled. The adventure had only just begun. The end.